So welcome, everybody. This is our first Zoom session, um, kicking off the fall season. And as usual, if you could stay muted during the talk, at the end we'll have Q&A, and you can put those questions or comments in the chat to me, and I'll field them to Louise. Anything that you want to know more about from our talk, or any questions at all that you have. So let me introduce Louise Cloutier. Since 1981, Louise has been coaching courageous women to speak up in the boardroom, the bedroom, and everywhere they go. Through her company, Women's Power Voice, Louise offers a variety of workshops on topics such as boundaries with bullies, body shaming, salary negotiations, and medical misogyny. Louise is currently writing a book on feminist negotiations, getting help you want, even in a sexist world. It seemed quite timely to have Louise right now, and although we don't talk about candidates and politics, I think the timing is great to be hearing more about women's role in the world. I'm going to put this on a speaker view. And with that, turn it over.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. Women getting heard is certainly an issue for our times. It's been a challenging world for women for a very long time. Everybody tells women, just be confident. Oh, come on, just do it, as if there's something wrong with us if we can't figure out something so simple. The fact is, it isn't that simple. Little baby girls start out confident, but then life happens. The good news, we can reclaim that confidence, especially if we can avoid blaming ourselves when this turns out to be painfully hard. One of the most damaging aspects of living in a sexist world is women being ignored or dismissed so many times, we come to believe that our wishes don't matter, that we have nothing valuable to say. After a while, it can start to feel like we barely exist. Shirley Chisholm said, "Tremendous amounts of talent are being lost to our society just because that talent wears a skirt." I constantly see business articles that praise emotional intelligence as if it's a new concept. Empathy, active listening, collaboration. Isn't that what women have been doing all along? So why don't we just praise women? Your empathy, your flexibility, your willingness to see both sides, that's not a weakness. That's your strength. Honor that in yourself. What women have to say does matter. What you have to say is important. Whoever told you that your truth doesn't matter might be afraid of the changes they'll have to accept if you speak up. That's a sneaky way to make sure that that never happens. Now more than ever, it's essential that women speak up. Yes, that can be easier said than done. Sometimes it's just too painful to face up to how often we've gotten bullied as women, especially since there's so few protections for us when that happens. Trying to ignore it and dismiss it, as we're often told to do, just means that the harm sinks in deeper, becomes more damaging. We deserve to heal up from that, to genuinely get support and protection going forward. As women, we get trained to be silent all our lives, not just by explicitly telling us to not speak, but by many events in our lives that intimidate and wear us down. A client came to me to learn how to deal with her verbally abusive boss. Turns out she also had a history of domestic violence. That made it even worse. What made it even worse was the people around her defended her abusive husband, and that's tragically common. I call that aftermath trauma. When a family defends a childhood abuser, when HR protects a sexual harasser, this also extends to the court system and society in general. When we live with that over time, we see it happening to women everywhere. It can break down our sense of justice, our fundamental sense of safety in the world. And that can be often worse than the original trauma itself, aftermath trauma. We combine that with systemic pay discrimination and other sexist practices, constantly being told we should be more selfless, as if we should aspire to erase ourselves. After a while, it's very understandable we come to believe that we are less worthy. So when we want to speak up for ourselves, we're often driving with the brakes on, with mud on the windshield and boulders in the road. It's not just a matter of learning techniques for how to speak up. We have to deal with the actual facts of our lives, of what has made this so hard if we're going to solve this problem. That client who came to me didn't realize how many burdens she was already carrying before she came to the job with the abusive boss. She had to unpack those burdens and to fully recognize this was not her fault. So many conditions of our lives wear down our confidence until we're just so damn tired, it's hard to keep standing up for ourselves. I've taught several classes about verbal abuse for a certification program for professionals dealing with domestic violence survivors. Verbal abuse is always where serious abuse starts. It can be subtle and insidious. But here's a tip to identify it. If it makes you feel less than, it's verbal abuse or bullying language. You deserve better. Women deal with the drip, drip, drip of this all the time in very subtle ways. It's so common, it becomes normalized. That doesn't mean it's not damaging. If you've been on the receiving end of that, my heart goes out to you. You do deserve to be treated with respect. Can we all agree that women are amazing? With all the challenges we face, we still know how to love. I'm going to name some very common forms of bullying language, and I'm guessing you've encountered this yourself. And never fear, I will follow this up with solutions. Often women don't realize the sneaky, intimidating tricks that show up in conversation that are specifically gendered. Pay attention to the words people use. Are they talking about the practical issue at hand? Or are they framing what they say in language to intimidate and control you, or just to avoid being accountable? For an example, this is an example, generalissimo. This is a term I use to describe a particular kind of trick. A woman says to her husband, please stop yelling at our son. And he says, are you telling me I'm a horrible father? Of course, she backpedals, assures him he's not a horrible father. And guess what? They're no longer talking about his yelling. Neat trick, huh? It's a diversionary tactic, using a generalization that's so exaggerated, so huge, carrying an accusation that's so painful, it must be immediately refuted. The more painful the trick, the harder it is for a woman to get her center back, and that's the point. Declaration of the truth instead of an opinion. When a mansplainer says, I know what you're really thinking. Oh, come on, they can't see inside your brain. Okay, what am I thinking right now? Come on, what am I thinking right now? They can't tell. People like that tend to use declarative sentence. That's the way it is, instead of just expressing an opinion. A client once told me how someone in her grad school class would regularly announce when their study group would meet the next time. I coached her to say, I hear that's what you would prefer. What about everyone else? Which points out how it wasn't, they weren't really justifiably speaking for everybody. I invite you to keep your ears open for the next time someone announces their opinion or preference as if it's the gospel truth or the law. It ain't. It's just their opinion. Power differentials. When bullies speak of loyalty or respect, you can be sure that only goes one way. They're actually looking for subjugation. How can you tell? It's when they refuse to respect you in return. 100% loyalty to them, zero respect for you. How dare you say that to me? Translation, how dare you value yourself as much as me? Unthinkable, unimaginable. Go ahead, dare to feel equal to them. Go ahead. By the way, how dare you is a diversionary trick. It immediately shuts down the conversation. What would they have to change if they listened respectfully to what you were saying? How dare you? And they just took a detour. The next time someone says, sacrifices must be made, you realize the abstract language there. Instead of, I want you to make, no, sacrifices must be made. Are they the ones who have to do the sacrificing? Probably not. That's another verbal trick. If someone is giving you orders, and that person isn't someone you freely granted authority to, like a boss, then that person is a bully. By the way, any bully who does this in a disrespectful way is also a bully. A boss who does that in a disrespectful way is also a bully. The reason we don't always object to that as women is because we've been trained to compliance. Even worse, we're often trained to believe we deserve that kind of treatment. When a bully gives you an order, you can simply say, thank you for the suggestion, I'll keep it in mind. Mansplaining happens more often than you think. Whenever a man talks at you as a woman, expressing their opinion in a declarative sentence as if it's the gospel truth, that's mansplaining. They are not the boss of you. I want to say that again. They're not the boss of you. Even if they're yelling or nasty or can make things unpleasant, in fact, that makes them even less valuable as an authority figure. That gives them less right to have authority, wouldn't you think? Bullies always punch down, attacking those who can't hit back. And you don't have to stay in that lower position. And just because someone is angry, that's not a license to hurt people. Think about that. How many times has someone come home and it just started yelling at you because they've had a bad day? You can be understanding, but you're not their dumping bucket. Belittling. This is something I see a lot. Don't worry your pretty little head. Whenever someone uses the word little to describe your projects, your beliefs, your life goals, that means they're trying to belittle you. What a sneaky trick. The only comment my ex ever made on the greatest accomplishment I'd ever made in my life until that point, he called it another one of your little obsessions. Ouch. If someone laughs at you because you're sensitive and kind-hearted, remember, you're not the one whose attitude needs fixing. Pay attention when someone complains about all the rules they have to follow now. That means they're looking at the situation in terms of lost power and control, not in terms of justice or morality. I call that legislating for every bone you don't want broken, which is silly. It means they don't understand the general basic concept underneath those rules, compassion and respect. Once people understand that, they don't need the rules. They would simply never want to cause someone pain. When someone throws an insult at you, there's no rule that says you have to catch it. I write a lot of memes. When dealing with a critical person, just because their approval is rare, don't assume their approval is important. False apologies. When an apology consists mostly of, but you gotta understand, that's just an excuse getting them off the hook, expecting you to do the emotional labor of understanding them when they have no intention of understanding how they hurt you. A real apology admits fault. A real apology takes responsibility and asks, what would you like me to do to make it better? Unless they can agree that hurting you was a bad thing, something they would not do again, they're not apologizing. The words I'm sorry have become so cheap and it's like a quick get out of jail card. I'm sorry you feel offended by that is the polar opposite of an apology. That's blaming you for objecting to it, blaming you for daring to believe that you deserve better. When someone insults you then says, just kidding, that means I can hurt you whenever I please and you can't blame me. They're not laughing because it's a joke. It isn't funny to enjoy someone's humiliation. This is about impunity, celebrating the fact that they can get away with it. Yes, sexism hurts everyone. That's something I hear a lot to excuse sexist behavior. Toxic masculinity teaches men to never express how they feel, to shut down their empathy for everyone, including each other and themselves. The patriarchy does hurt everyone, but here's the thing. Bullies and abusers choose their behavior. They choose to punch down. The fact that society has told them boys would be boys all their lives, that's no excuse. It's still their choice to hurt people. I strongly urge us to never forget that. Women are trained to make allowances, to smooth things over, to protect the fragile egos of toxic men, but the fact is they're not helpless babies, they're grown-ups capable of making better choices. Nobody's forcing them to hurt people, that's on them. Women's responses to the problem. Blaming women for submitting to patriarchal norms is like blaming your finger for bleeding after it's been cut. So many times women get told, don't let it bother you. It shouldn't be up to us to keep shrugging off disrespect over and over. Seriously, would you tell someone who's been mugged, don't let it bother you? If it's only treated as a trivial thing when the abuse has been normalized by society, that's not okay. It can be hard to look at and see how deep those roots go into our society. Hard work to root that out. But at the very least, I'm telling you today, it's not you. It's not your fault. And it's not your job to somehow control their behavior. That's on them. Women have been taught to be universally generous and kind to everyone, including bullies. But here's the problem. It's not truly loving kindness if that means being unkind to yourself. Why do women keep secrets about being abused? Because we get blamed and shamed for someone else's crime. How many times have you apologized to a bully, not because you did anything wrong, but just to get them to stop yelling? Unfortunately, that doesn't keep the peace. It just temporarily reduces the noise and the abuse continues. Women sometimes confuse having power with abuse of power. It's totally understandable, especially for abuse survivors. Being as powerful as other people doesn't make you a bad person, just a healthy one. Letting loved ones treat us badly isn't a measure of how much we love them. It's actually a measure of how little we love ourselves. We all deserve so much better than this. Better responses. There's a lot of problems in this world, but women asking for too much isn't one of them. So why not go for what we want? It's much easier to let go of an abuser in your heart and mind once you feel truly solid and safe in your own self-compassion. If you're convinced that you are powerless, then you will give away the power that you do have without even noticing it. And in a patriarchal society, somebody will take it away from you. Reclaim your power, it belongs to you. That means you no longer need other people to reassure you that you're worthy of love. You already are. Don't outsource your self-esteem that gives other people power that actually belongs to you. The power to affirm that you're a worthy human being. Why work so hard to prove your worth to people who are shaming you? To get them to give you something that you've already got. Given everything you deal with as a woman, whatever you do to take really good care of yourself, that's a feminist act, so thank you. Sometimes the most profoundly feminist thing you can do is to simply refuse to let life cut you down. Learned helplessness is a habit. It's kept in place by the belief that other people will always be more powerful, but think carefully. What can they do to you, really? Call you insulting names? What power does that have once you recognize it's not about the insult? They're doing this to gain control. So those specific insults are meaningless. They have no power at all if your self-esteem is intact. There's a huge liberation in discovering what power you actually do have. Drawing the line. Self-care is not just a day at the spa getting a mani-pedi. It's also the day when you say, that's it, no more, I've had enough. The next time a bully threatens you with their disapproval, remember this, the only opinion that really matters here is how you see yourself. Believe in yourself. You deserve respect. You deserve to be safe and cared for. You deserve to receive your heart's desire, absolutely. This is a poem I wrote about courage. Real courage isn't fresh scrubbed, bright smile, sure, no problem. Courage is sweaty. Courage is stuck, damn it, convinced you can't possibly, then wiping off your runny nose, taking just one step. Okay, that's all I can manage right now. Then another on wobbly feet, keeping all your focus on getting there. Then another step and another, ouch, but yes. Then after it's all done, only then realizing, how about that, I did it. Yes, you did. When someone treats you badly, it's not a judgment on you, it's a judgment on them. It's their choice to do that. Whatever you may be going through with this, you're not alone. Bullies are loud and annoying. You're tempted to just give in. But unless you believe the insult and lies, they never really win. Now, the inner game, this is what we do have control over. If we want to stand up more easily for our own dignity, then we need to attend to the issues on the inside from our past, as much as the outer challenges that we're still coming across now. Gently, lovingly unpacking the reasons why this has been hard. Also identifying our own habits that tend to perpetuate that difficulty. Good news, we can make choices about that. For example, over apologizing, which is essentially practicing shame. It's amazing how often women apologize for things that aren't our fault. I once had a client use a counter app on her phone to track how many times in the course of a day she apologized for no reason. She was amazed. I'm sorry, is this seat taken? I'm sorry, when is the meeting? I once saw a woman apologize for bumping into an empty chair. That's apologizing for existing, for taking up space in the world. For goodness sake, take up space. Find something gorgeous about who you are and celebrate that. I guarantee that if you walk out the door feeling that way, it will brighten somebody's day, because genuinely happy people make other people happy. And guess what? It means you're less easy to intimidate or undermine or shame. When we cherish ourselves, it's so much easier to set boundaries that get respected, easier to make respect, to make requests and negotiate for what we want and actually get it. In order to get what you really want, you need to start with truly believing that you deserve it, down to every single cell in your body, mind, and soul. And not just because of the good you do in the world, but because you're alive. That's it. That's all you need, truly. I am so glad you're alive in the world, and I'm willing to bet there are plenty of people who would agree. Listen to them, listen to how they love you, and really take that in. That leads me to my next topic. Learning to take in compliments. Oh my goodness, that can be so hard for women. You can say thank you instead of it wasn't that hard, or it was a fluke, or I got lucky, oh, but I did so many things wrong, I'm so embarrassed, or rushing to say that it was just a team effort. Generosity is fine, but not to the extent of never taking credit. People pleasing isn't a problem as long as you remember to also please yourself. Don't apologize for your strengths or your ambition. Shine, shine, shine. One of my favorite stories is from when I was on a committee organizing a weekend conference. At the end of the weekend, everybody got together. It was a huge circle with several hundred people. They called the organizers to come to the center of the circle to get appreciation. And all of us huddled up and, hiding, not letting the compliments in. And I said, well, this is just silly. I turned around, I opened my arms really wide, and I said, I had a wonderful time doing this. And everybody cheered. The rest of the team turned around. They let themselves be loved. What's wrong with that? Everybody had a wonderful time cheering and saying hooray and applauding and jumping up and down. As people left the event, lots of them said it was their favorite part of the weekend. All of us spreading around the love. So let yourself be celebrated. You never know who you will inspire when you do that. I often tell my clients to reverse engineer the goal, condition, state of mind they would prefer. Do you want to feel less helpless or down on yourself? Okay, what are the things you can do that help you feel more accomplished? It's amazing how medicinal decluttering one room can be. Then every time you walk in there, you go, check this out. I did that. So what else can I do? What other things have I been longing to tackle and overcome? I have more confidence to do that now. Reverse engineer the problem, figure out how you want to feel, then plan out a map that helps you get there. And this is absolutely essential. It's not just a question of pushing yourself hard. Oh, what a relief. Sometimes reverse engineering means listening with great compassion as you unpack the reasons why things have been difficult. Have you been feeling discouraged because someone has hurt you? If so, give yourself lots of TLC. Give yourself space to grieve. Give yourself some consolation and lots of tender hugs. I have a great big terry cloth bathrobe. It's huge. It goes down to my ankles. Whenever I step out of the shower, I wrap myself in that big squishy bathrobe and I go, hug. I do that every day, and it's beautiful medicine, I can tell you. Sometimes it's the simplest things like that that can heal us on a really deep level, reminding us that we're worth cherishing, worth listening to, worth defending and protecting. I encourage you to find little practices like that bathrobe hug and use them every day. Another one, learn how to detox, how to shed the garbage that sometimes gets tossed our way, as well as the challenges of just living in the world right now. I've often coached women to use the silent scream in the handicapped bathroom. If you go all the way to the back of the stall, nobody can see your feet kicking in the air going, and you come out of there saying, Okay, so now I'm much calmer. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Take a good scrubbing shower. Gonna wash that man right out of my hair. And if something is hard to let go of, find out why it's hard with no blame. Is it because of a trigger similar to a past trauma? Give yourself lots of TLC for that. Find someone willing to listen and support you through that process. Another tip, use it. I have a picture of Django Reinhardt, the jazz guitarist, on my desk with the words, use it. In a fire, he lost the use of these two fretting fingers. And instead of giving up, he revolutionized jazz guitar with just those two, the remaining two fingers on the guitar. So whatever has happened to you in your life, make use of it. That way you have it instead of it having you. As a result, you can look at the events of your life and feel grateful that that happened. I call that the third yum. Years ago, I was sitting on my back steps and I realized I could say yum instead of om while meditating. So yumming in the blessings, yumming in the things that are already in your life, even if it feels like, oh, do I deserve? No, yum, I take them in. Okay, yum, I let them in, yum, yum, yum. Yumming in the things we wish for, the things that we aspire to. Okay, this is possible. I believe I can do this, yum. And then yumming in the challenges. That's the third yum, even the things that are tough. Looking the dragon in the eye and saying, okay, I know I'm going to become stronger. My life will be deeper because I've lived through this. So once we've fully said yum to whatever happens, then we can face anything. If this sounds challenging to you, just add two powerful words, so far. This scares me, so far. I'm really bad at this, so far. This is too much for me, so far. I used to say this so often to clients while knocking on the arm of my office chair. After a while, all I had to do was, and after a while, they just said, because they knew so far. Whenever they were talking about a limitation, yeah, state what's true until now. Acknowledge the truth of your life until now. That frees up your options going forward. Take a good long look in the mirror. Take a stock of how far you've come, the mountains you've climbed, the floods you've survived, and all the love you've shared along the way. Hello, beautiful. That's another good practice, like that bathrobe hug. Another inner game idea, find your allies, find your allies, find your allies, find your allies, telling ourselves that the only victory that matters is the one you achieve entirely alone is BS. Any woman who's organized potluck for a new mom knows that new mom shouldn't have to do it all by herself. And the most successful women in the world, those who've achieved big things in a public sphere, know that it takes a village, for goodness sake. When you're feeling down, find your allies. Reach out to the people who believe in you. When you're feeling scared or hurt, reach out to the people who don't just say, get over it. Instead, people who are willing to listen to the reasons why you're scared. That makes it much easier for you to genuinely get over it. Reach out to the people who value you, who cherish you, who believe in you. Sometimes all you need is just sharing a lovely meal with good friends to help you get back on track. Sometimes it's deeper conversations to help you unpack what's been holding you back, helping you remember the deeper courage that's in your heart, helping you remember who you are. And if you put affirmations up on your bathroom window, here's a suggestion. I will reach out today to someone who reminds me who I am. That can be the best medicine in the world. That's the inner game. It's a great way to build up immunity, those tricks I was talking about. Here's some more tips dealing with bullying language. You can always say, could you rephrase that with respect? I'd be happy to answer once you've done that. Why not? You deserve respect. Oh, here's another favorite story of mine. Years ago, I was flirting with a guy at a party. And in the course of 10 minutes, he told me 3 times that I shouldn't eat garlic before our date. Oh my God, are you kidding? So I paused. I said, I'm happy to consider your request, but I don't take orders. And then I said, wait a second. I just met you, but I'm already in love with garlic. Bye-bye. So here are some vocal techniques that I've been teaching for decades. And they use 3 chakras, though I don't use the word chakra when I'm giving talks for women lawyers. Grounding, root, It's not just a yoga exercise. It's feeling at home in the world, feeling safe, feeling like we belong here, tapping into the life of this beautiful earth. You are part of the magnificent, juicy, gorgeous life on this earth. Sink your roots deep into the planet. Did you hear what's happening in my voice as I'm saying that? Because I'm sinking my roots down where all that life and beautiful life lives. That belongs to you. You belong to that. That's what grounding means. A way to get quickly grounded is to tune into the sensation of your feet or the chair underneath you. And I'm going to demonstrate what happens when you lose grounding or gain it. I'm going to continue to speak at exactly the same level of pitch, no lower, no higher. But I'm going to start to remove the grounding from my voice. Did you hear what just happened there? I'm not speaking any higher. But if I get less and less grounded, less and less connected to my tailbone, then I start to sound like Valley Girl, and my name is Louise. Is that okay? So if I all I had to do was think of my tailbone. Right, there we go. I thought of my feet. Did you hear what happened? Do you hear how much authority comes into my voice just by feeling grounded? Third eye, brightness, projection. Hey, it's that bright sound right there. This is very effective when you're in a noisy room, if there's a fan running and lots of people talking. If you have to cut through the noise, getting that brightness in there can be useful. It's also a sense of expansion. When I coach someone in public speaking, I go to the back of the room and I open my arms really wide. And they know that means embrace the whole room. Imagine a very large hug that includes absolutely everybody in that room. It's not a demeaning approach to public speaking, like picturing them in their underwear. That's awful. That's like how to feel less intimidated by intimidating other people. Yeah. Instead, imagine a really huge hug, like you're inviting everyone over for dinner. You're a wonderful hostess and you're feeding them something delicious and nourishing with what you have to say. Whenever I would make that arm gesture from the back of the room, I tell you that public speaker literally became easier to hear. Her words became clearer and more distinct. She wasn't getting any louder. She didn't have to yell. She just reached out and touched all of the hearts in the room. So more people did hear her. Now that can be an imbalance. Sometimes women just use brightness to be heard. But that sounds annoying. And it often expresses annoyance. If you go into those conversations carrying baggage from old pain, then that's what you're going to sound like. I'm really annoyed and you're not listening to me and you have to listen to me. When people hear that sound, that's all they'll notice. They won't hear what you're asking for because they're trying to defend themselves. And it might not be the best way to get what you want. Deal with your rage somewhere else before that conversation. I'm not telling you to stuff it down, of course not. Do the laundry about that rage, do that discharge somewhere else, the silent scream in the handicapped bathroom. Now, if all you've got is grounding and brightness, now that's BITCH, we don't want that. So what's missing? Heart. By this, I mean, okay, so the heart sound, all I had to do was put my hand on my heart and you hear how my voice changed right there. That's an immediate way to put heart into the sound of your voice. That includes yourself. That's compassion for yourself. It's a really powerful tool for getting what you want. When you get in touch with empathy for yourself, it becomes easier to create empathy in the conversation with the other person. So this is how heart sound is actually a strategic tool. Imagine two different managers having to fire somebody using the same words. One says, well, you did cross a line, so I'm going to have to let you go. That's just the way it is. I can't do anything about that. Ouch. Ooh, what a terrible manager. And the other one says, now you did cross a line. I'm sorry. We're going to have to let you go. I'm really sorry, but I can't do anything about it. That's just the way it is. Now, I would want to work for that second boss. And it's still saying the same thing. It's still, if you have to communicate an unpleasant truth, the other person will listen far more willingly if you show up with that heart sound. The fact is, when you tap into your heart, it's not just a vocal trick. It helps you be more empathic to the difficulties they're facing. It helps you find a collaborative solution that they're more likely to agree with. That's negotiations 101, by the way, looking for the win-win solution. Building what classic negotiations theory calls the golden bridge. Pointing out all the reasons why what you're proposing is actually good for them too. Those are the agreements that will hold, that will turn into lasting solutions. You get a lot better results from that than venting at somebody and just marching off. That might be temporarily satisfying, but it won't get you what you want. Do your venting somewhere else with either that silent scream or talking to somebody who truly hears you. Then once you've cleared out those toxins, you can show up grounded, knowing you're at home and that you deserve to get what you want, with bright carrying power, reaching out for your dreams, and heart that says, yes, we can find a solution together. A solution that affirms everyone's dignity, affirms everybody's deepest needs to feel heard and respected. And in the process, you'll not only get the practical result you're looking for, you'll feel closer to the person you're talking with. Every time you have one of those successful conversations, it makes it easier and easier to find the collaborative solutions together in the future. Now, she said earlier that I'm writing a book on feminist negotiations. That's about specific situations that are challenging for women, getting equal pay with a sexist boss, being treated with respect in a male-dominated profession, not just in the workplace, but also in our personal lives, being genuinely listened to by a doctor. Medical misogyny is a major topic for me right now. And getting help with house chores, for crying out loud. It isn't women's work, not when everybody is dirtying the dishes and the laundry. It belongs to everybody. There are ways to deal with all of those situations, but it has to start with the shine, shine, shine that says, of course, I deserve it. And not just because you do good things. What about the days when you're too tired to do things for others? Do you still deserve to be treated well? Of course you do. You deserve it simply because you're alive. In a world that constantly puts us down as women, that might be the most revolutionary principle of all. You deserve care and respect. You deserve to get what you want simply because you're alive, because you're a precious human being with a beautiful heart and soul. I wish I could see all of your faces right now with your beautiful smiles to let you know that one by one. You deserve to be listened to, taken seriously, respected, and cared for. You deserve to get what you want. Bless you. If you want to know more about the work that I do, go to womenspowervoice.com. Thank you so much. So I'm open for question and answers. Questions.
Okay. I'm going to put us in gallery.
Great. Yes.
And people can unmute. I don't know if that worked.
Hello, Iris.
So I just wanted to make a comment. This is less of a question really, but it seems, at least to me, that there's so much misogyny in our news, and it winds up creating anger and frustration, even if we don't even recognize that we're feeling that. But it can be like a car accident. You just keep watching it. And so I think for me, the thing I have to make myself do is turn it off. Don't watch so much. So I just thought I'd throw that out there and see if you had a comment you'd make about that.
Yeah, I do a news fast every so often. I segment off the time when I will check out the current headlines. And in addition to blocking it out, I think detox is also a really important thing to do regularly. There's another technique I didn't mention, the Rapunzel release. If you imagine like Rapunzel with this really thick braid, right? You imagine it rippling down, all the way out. There's lots of visualizations about how to get something out of your body, because it's not just cognitive, it's not just verbal, it's not just abstract, it's something that affects us physically. So the more you can do that to detox from the misogyny you hear about in the news, which we all do, then the less you're carrying going forward.
Do you ever find that that men have you had men participate in your workshops? Because it seems a lot of men don't they seem rather clueless about the things that they say sometimes and how it affects us.
That's a really good question. I used to work with both men and women many years ago. And at the beginning of the Me Too movement, um, somebody suggested that I do workshops for both men and women. The problem is that in many circumstances, and I've seen this happen like in that class at the Y about verbal abuse, the men would tend to dominate the conversation. And it was very difficult to make sure that women, that there was space for the women to speak and be heard. You know, men would tell the women what they really feel. Men would say, oh God, I heard somebody say in one of those classes that don't men rape as often, don't women rape as often as men? I'm like, are you kidding? Oh my God. So seriously. So it's difficult to do this in a setting where it is genuinely equal and genuinely fair. And so that women don't end up feeling pushed out about something that's supposed to be really about them. Centering, it comes down to a question of privilege in a lot of ways, where people are accustomed to always having the mic, always being the one in control, always being the one who's treated as the authority. And very often, I mean, I agree, it's often cluelessness. If they've lived this way all their lives, then it takes a wake-up call to realize, you know what, center the people who are actually being hurt. I mean, this is something that was often discussed in, the anti-racism movement, when a lot of, white fragility, when a lot of white people were taking stock of their privilege in terms of racism, and centering people who are getting hurt can be difficult because that means listening to some hard truths. So for men to be able to be part of these conversations, then it requires a willingness to hear those things and not immediately say, well, not all men, which is just defending their ego. It's saying that my ego is more important than whether you get hurt, which is like, oh, it's actually not more important. So there's a lot of ways that, a lot of things that make it more difficult to do this in a mixed setting. But I do know some men doing wonderful work. I mean, there's somebody who was part of that certification class at the Y on domestic violence, who teaches workshops for domestic violence perpetrators, and that's courageous work. So it takes a while. I mean, the whole bear conversation, would you choose a bear over a man? So many men got offended by that because they're accustomed to having their egos protected. It's going to take a while. And in the process, it's not our job to pat them on the head and tell them there's not really a problem. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And Susan had asked about strategies from when that other person is unwilling to engage with your power.
Mm-hmm. It helps to get specific about the circumstance. Rather than trying to get them to change their personality, which they're going to really resist, go for a practical change. And then they get lots of positive reinforcement for having done a good thing. So they're more likely to try other things as well. Make it situational. Make it something that's like, this is something I would like. Can you agree to that? Yes or no? Make sure you get the yes or no answer rather than, I wish you would do that, and then leave the room. Don't just vent. Can I get an agreement from you, yes or no, about this change that I would really like? And once that agreement has been made and once it holds, then it's easier to introduce other things that have been problematic. I worked with somebody whose boyfriend would use lots of intense rage talk while driving, and it would bother her. It would really trigger her because her family of origin had a lot of verbal abuse. And she would feel so thrown, she couldn't wrap her head around asking him to please not do it because it was so triggering. So during this is actually another good way to approach this, when things are not blowing up at the moment, during a calm time when everybody's getting along just fine, that's the time to negotiate those agreements. So she got him to agree that if she used, I forget what safe word she used, like bumblebee or something. I'm feeling stung. I honestly don't know what her safe word was. All she had to do was manage to say bumblebee or whatever it was, and he changed his behavior. He said, "Oh yeah," because he had already agreed to not yell at other drivers that way. And it made a big difference and it improved things between them. So start with the practical situations, get an actual buy-in agreement, and then it's easier to get agreements on other things. And eventually they start to see that compassion and respect are actually a better way to live.
Makes sense. Anybody have any comments or questions for Louise? I just kind of open the floor here.
I think Iris, didn't you start to say something a few minutes ago? You're on mute though.
You're still on mute. Where's that darn button?
I can't really talk coherently because I had major oral surgery yesterday and my mouth is all screwed up. But I just wanted to tell everybody that Louise and I knew each other in college a million years ago, and we reconnected on a Facebook group called, what's it called, Louise?
At Ladies for Kamala.
Yeah, but we're not getting political here. It's just
Yeah.
that's how we reconnected. And when I found out what she was into, I felt she was the absolute perfect fit for TTN and that she had so much to offer us. And I am just so glad that we were able to work out something to bring her here. And I hope you guys are interested in hearing more from her.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing her to us, Iris. That was great. I think one of the topics people were a little interested in was medical misogyny. Some of us working with anti-racism stuff have heard a lot about how difficult it is for Blacks, but women. And I think that's true for
Yeah.
Black and white women.
Obstetric racism makes things literally life-threatening for lots of women of color. But women typically, frequently get their symptoms dismissed, sometimes in very dangerous ways. I know somebody whose mother died in the parking lot from a heart attack when she had shown up at the doctor's office with symptoms of cardiac problems, and the doctor sent her home with psych meds. So, yeah, I personally have had experiences not only with medical misogyny, but with the toxic masculinity that infects medical training for doctors and the profits over patients of corporations buying hospitals. So I was already planning a workshop on medical misogyny before I got diagnosed with cancer last fall. So I learned lots of on-the-job practical things about how to navigate the medical system that's gone into the medical misogyny work as well.
So Mara, I think you were going to say something.
I put it in the chat, but I just wanted to thank you for coming and speaking to us and these practical suggestions, and also reminding me of a lot of this thing, the business of apology and deserving respect. I mean, those, I don't think we as women hear that stuff very often. And so we're in this environment where we're trying to sort of get by with whatever situation we're in. And it's just really empowering to hear you speak to us about what we can do and what we can expect and how we can work toward what we want if we don't rant at the people we want something from.
Yeah, the anger is legitimate. It's just a question of discharging it before you go to the conversation where you're asking for what you want. Certainly get heard about that, about how much it hurts. And you can tell that person once you've had the discharge and rage, you can say, you know what, that really hurt. And you hear how I said that with grounding and with heart. I expect you to care about me. So this is something I think you would want to know. Do you hear how that's a very different way to say that than accusing somebody so they immediately just defend themselves? There are ways to say it that include compassion and respect for both people. But if we've been systematically hurt, then there's a lot of laundry to do before that conversation can happen.
I do think it's really helpful to let people know that they have hurt you or your husband or whatever, because we suck it up. I do. I can be a martyr and just, go off and sulk or something. So it is, I think it does help because there is a cluelessness. It's not necessarily intentional or malicious.
Yeah, and
Right.
that distances people. If we put on more and more armor around our heart, then the relationships suffer from that, as opposed to being honest, clearing the air, rebuilding the bridge and the connection, which requires honesty, and it requires knowing how to say things so that the other person is more able to hear them.
Lainey, what did you want to say?
Oh, I'm wondering about women who may not stick up for other women because they are afraid or leery or whatever you want to call it of the man or men or the boss or whatever. It's sort of like I have an inclination of if there's a woman who needs help, I don't think a lot of people will rush in and try and help out.
It's a tricky situation because it's their consent that really matters. If somebody is in an abusive relationship, and this is something, I took my first class about domestic violence like 35 years ago. We have the urge to save them, to say, oh, get out now, you have to get out now. But they're already having their personal agency, their personal independence, their self-determination undermined by the relationship. It doesn't help to have somebody else give them an order. Asking the questions, what I call provocative questions asked permissively. By any chance, is there something you're getting out of this limitation? You hear how my heart went into the sound as I said that?
Yep.
A lot of my work is helping people come out of their comfort zone at a rate they can manage so that they're able to take more courageous steps. Now, part of what I heard you say was when women side with an abuser. Am I hearing you correctly?
Not necessarily side with them, but not stand up for the woman and sort of like say, yeah, she's right. So pay attention.
In which case, my heart goes out to how scared they must be. Any woman who has taken in so much misogyny that she doesn't even recognize it anymore, and she makes it more difficult for other women to speak up for themselves. That's somebody in a lot of pain. And just like I said, you can't necessarily change someone's personality, but there are ways, maybe not when they're on the spot, maybe not in public, to draw them out. And, say if they just got yelled at, wow, that must have been hard. Create the bridge so that if they can confide in you more, then they will feel less of a need to just stay in that armored, scared place.
Okay, great.
Any other final thoughts or questions for Louise?
Can you come back?
I knew someone was
I would love
in
to. Talked about the possibility of my doing a workshop on medical misogyny. And I was thinking earlier today that a lot of what I talked about in the talk today could be a workshop as well, so that women could say, you know what, this thing happened to me. And, oh, I'm so sorry it happened to you. To be heard, to feel supported, to feel welcomed in a safe space about these issues.
Yep.
And it's not just about, wow, poor me. It's about, yeah, me too. Yeah, really, you too. It's not just me. No, it's everybody. Oh, yeah. So there can be powerful medicine in that collaboration, in feeling heard in a group. so that everybody's contribution is valued, so that everybody's story is important, especially if women have felt isolated and not heard. So I'm happy to come back. I am enjoying seeing all of your smiling faces, and I would love to see you again.
And Lainey, if
Fabulous.
there's a focus that you'd like Louise to do in another session, speak up. We'll see if we can get some consensus.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So anybody else?
Louise, thank you so, so much. I think it was really interesting and it was great to hear those tips that you had. It's helpful and
I'm so glad.
appreciate it.
Yeah, and more than ever, absolutely, women's voices are needed. I am convinced that it's our voices that are saving our nation right now. So please don't stay silent, because we need to hear your own perspective, because nobody else has that but you. So please be heard.
Applaud that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and thanks
You
for coming.
too.
Thank you.
Louise. Good night.
Night.
Goodbye. So Ginny,
Thank you.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
It was great. I think people enjoyed it.
I'm so glad. Yay.
It was really helpful. So I'll try to corral the folks and see if there's another focus or angle or something that people would like to hear more about. And
Mhm.
then I can reach out to you.
That sounds great. Okay,
Uh,
already.
Yeah, and I will get our second half of our payment out to you shortly.
Terrific. You have
Thank
my
you
address
so
now.
much.
So cool.
Have a great, great weekend and thank you again.
You too. Enjoy this beautiful day for you.
I will. Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye.